Hey y'all, it's Nick from your 3-2 Pitch. Welcome to the 3-2 Pitch, our podcast where we're going across right now talking about each division in baseball. Drew, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's been a pretty busy day in the world of baseball. A lot of news coming out, and I guess maybe a little bit of optimism that we may have a season. But there's also a lot of question marks.
Yeah, for sure. So, as y'all know, we start the podcast with a question, and he actually briefly just went over exactly what my question is without the proposals coming out and the leagues agreed upon, what do you think? What are the details? Give it all.
Okay, so for those of you that didn't hear the news, there has been a proposal that has been laid out for a return to the league for baseball, and here are the details. If you don't mind, I'm going to read some of this. I know it's not always the most journalistic thing to do is to read, but I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Number one, they're looking at expanding the playoffs from 10 to 14 teams. They're looking at an 82-game season that would start on July 4th. They're looking at using home stadiums in areas that have local and state government approval. So, something that I actually mentioned a few weeks ago. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I will say that this is one of my ideas was regional stadiums. They're talking about a very, very shortened spring training that would begin in June and be ready for early July start. They're talking about the proposal includes a universal designated hitter, across the leagues. Geographical schedules. This is the part that I like. So teams are only playing in-division opponents and interleague opponents in their area. So American League Central teams play only AL Central and NL Central teams. AL West only plays AL West teams and NL West teams. So you're talking about Giants A's, you're talking about Dodgers Angels, you're talking about all the regional, the Mets and Red Sox and the Mets and the Yankees. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, really, when you think about it. They're talking about a 30-man roster, which would also include a taxi squad that would have upward of 50 players available. So that's a lot to digest. I think the thing that we need to think about as baseball fans is, yes, we want this. We want baseball. We all want baseball back. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna confess I watched the Korean baseball organization. I've been watching those games in the middle of the night. Now part of that is because I lived in Korea and I actually have been to a lot of those games, and I was a personal fan of the LG Twins when I lived in Seoul. But there's only so much of it I can watch. It's brutally boring. And while they're making decent plays and there's some hitting going on, it's just not the same. So I'm ready for the big leagues to come back. I can't wait for the games to come back and to be able to, just even if I can't watch the games live because I have a new baby coming, be able to watch them at my own convenience. I still have my MLB.TV app. I don't care if there's fans there or not. I want to watch baseball and I want to watch my team play. I want to watch the Giants play. Whether they lose, all 82 games or if they, whether they lose half of them. And there's also, to me, there's a lot of excitement in the fact that it's an 82-game season. And, anything can happen. It's because a lot of teams get off to a good start. And we've talked about this, and, how they get off to a great start. And then, eventually they have their slow decline. Well, in this situation, they wouldn't have an opportunity for that slow decline. However, as I was reading the story, I believe he calls himself, I don't know if you saw this, Nicholas, Obi, I think his name is Obi Sean Kenobi
Sean Doolittle, yep.
Okay, that's his Twitter handle. He has been against this, and he made comments today, quote, "Bear with me, but it feels like we've zoomed past the most important aspect of any Major League restart plan. Health protections for players, families, staff, stadium workers, and workforce it would require to resume a season." So there's a lot to digest. Will it happen? My guess is yes, because money rules and the players want to get paid. but I don't think that this is concrete and set in stone yet. It's going to take some time for the Players Association to dive in and really look at the details of this. I like the plan initially. I like the idea of starting on July 4th. I think that would be a kind of a great start to the season, and maybe kind of an indication that the country is starting to come back, especially on Independence Day. And some of my concerns are more about the hot weather in the summer, but I mean, those were concerns that we had anyway when we played when teams play in the summer. I mean, it's just the way it is. I like the shortened season. I'm not against the DH in both leagues. I used to be against it. I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter. If we can get baseball back, I'm willing to sacrifice that. I think it'll bring more offense to the game. And I love the geographical schedule. That, to me, is the best part of it. So I'm optimistic. I used to be not optimistic, and now I feel like things are going in the right direction. But I also do agree with Doolittle and the fact that safety is important. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and hopefully we have a season soon.
Yeah, so like you, I've been watching the KBL, the LG Twins. Go LG Twins! They're kind of like the New York Mets of the Korean Baseball League. So that's the team I'm jumping on. I actually have Twin stuff, as we all know. I'm a Mets fan. We go over this every podcast. I'm talking about ALS or AL Central. Man, I'm losing my mind through this. I need baseball back, but. Going through, I'm actually going to be making a Doolittle video. It's already uploaded on the channel, so go back and watch that if you haven't already. I'm going to be talking about his long thread. He had like 20 different tweets, like just all on one thread. Also talking about the proposed plan. We obviously just covered it, but, just more in depth, kind of the Doolittle side and like the reason why I personally like the plan. I want baseball back, but personally, I just still don't think there's going to be baseball. So, I mean, I'm just hoping. I'm hoping there's baseball. I'm hoping somehow MLB, the Players Union, can just pull this one together, bring him back July 4th. But as a player myself, I mean, a shortened spring training. If players haven't been throwing as often as they need to be, it's hard to go find a long toss partner. Then their arms will just be destroyed in this shortened spring training. So, I mean, it's just as a player's standpoint and the health wise, I just don't think it's going to be the greatest thing. They'll be pushed through a lot this year. So I still don't think it's going to happen unless somehow they can address that. So, as we said, AL Central today. Go through, in my Twin stuff, we're going to go through division 5th to 1st. So, Drew, 5th place, who you got?
So, just again I like to sort of give my sort of just perspective on the division before we start. But this is definitely my least favorite division in the big leagues. For many different reasons. I've never been a fan of this division. It's always been such a boring division to me. But there's been some great baseball over the last 10 years in the AL Central. When you think about the Indians and the Royals, who had, such a great run, and now the Twins, who are, starting to push their way back up to the top, and the Tigers, who at the beginning of this decade, when you think about what they did in the early 2010s and 2012 when they got swept by my Giants, of course. One of the most underrated World Series champions of all time. They don't get any credit in the world for what they did, beating a tremendous Detroit Tiger team, and the Triple Crown winner striking out looking at the end to end the series. Sergio Romo with the fastball right down the middle. Maybe you can show that highlight to your audience, but it's been a competitive division, but it's a boring division. Whenever I watch an AL Central game, I'll just fall asleep right on the spot. So if you're having trouble sleeping at night, go on MLB.tv and watch your Royals versus Indians highlights or even full game, which will really put you to sleep. But to start the division, this was an obvious, it's a very obvious division, to be honest. The Detroit Tigers are the worst team in this division, and it's not even close. It's actually pretty bad. It's amazing what's happened to this franchise. They are just so bad. Last year having the worst record in the big leagues. I could be wrong on that, Nicholas, but I'm pretty sure they had the worst record in the league. If I go back, they they lost far over 100 games. Their starting rotation is, to me, pathetic. Jordan Zimmerman, you want to talk about a pitcher that just absolutely went down the toilet. And maybe the Nationals knew that this was going to happen to him. When you look at their lineup, bottom line, C.J. Cron is their best player. And that's not good. Now that Castellanos is gone, last year being traded to the Cubs and moving on. Miguel Cabrera, a shell of his former self. They're young players. Austin Romine, Goodrum, Reyes, Jacoby Jones. They're all unproven. Actually, Jonathan Scope is maybe one of their best players also, but they're just not going to be competitive. They're just a non-competitive team that I don't. Nicholas, you might be able to talk more about their future, but I don't see a direction that they're headed here.
Yeah, so I think I agree. This division is probably the worst and most boring division in baseball. It's this division is always the division I forget a team because for some reason I can't. They're not. It's not very notable. However, like you said, in the last 10 years, we can even expand to 20 years. They've had some really, really solid teams. We talked about the Tigers that made a World Series run. The Royals making the World Series back-to-back years. Losing to the Giants and coming back and beating the Mets. That was stupid. The White Sox had some good teams. The Indians went to the World Series, and now the Twins are competing. All 5 of these teams within the last 20 years have been really solid. Obviously, 5th place, the Tigers, there's no competition. Bringing in Cron and Scope may save you a couple games. Both from the Minnesota Twins. They're going to hit you probably around 40, 50 home runs. But in a pitcher-friendly ballpark, you have Michael Fulmer going down. That was a pretty – now looking at it with all the injury issues, trading him for, I believe it was Cespedes, is looking better and better. But, he has a lot of potential to be solid. Boyd, can he even pitch well? Boyd and Fulmer are top of your rotations. But, again, can they stay healthy? Their bullpen, nothing. Like you said, Zimmerman, their rotation, they just don't have much. In terms of just anything. However, when I look at their roster and their depth, they have some really solid players. You have Daz Cameron and Riley Green, both center field prospects coming for you. You have a bunch of pitching prospects. You have Casey Mize. You have you have a few more people. I can't name them off the top of my head. I did a Tigers rebuild in MLB The Show, so they have a ton of young prospects that are going to show up. So they had the worst record last year, and they're going to have the number 1 pick this year. So this team is it's re-gearing. It's still far way away. You don't have very much in terms of talent now. Miguel Cabrera, he's just getting older and older. So this team is going to be very, very solid coming up soon if their players can turn around or their prospects pan out. I think the pitching is probably one of their strengths, and otherwise 5th place, they're not very exciting. On the 4th place, who you got?
I got the Kansas City Royals. They would be a last place team if it wasn't for the Tigers. Their pitching depth is, to be desired. Danny Duffy, to me, he's not a number 1 ace. When Ian Kennedy's your closer, it's just a little maybe Trevor Rosenthal, if he can kind of get it together. They kind of just lost their mojo, and I think part of it really is the fact that ownership sort of just gave up on them. And I don't mean that in the way of that ownership doesn't want to win, because I've gotten in trouble by saying that over the years about teams. Most ownerships want to win. Okay, but ultimately, the first thing, and it's sad to think of this, but the first thing that they always care about is the financial aspect of the organization. It's just the way it is. It's the way it will always be. And this team, they gutted their organization. They got rid of Lorenzo Cain. They got rid of Mike Moustakas. They got rid of Eric Hosmer. Those were the guys that were the cornerstones of that organization. Those 3 guys, along with Alex Gordon and Salvador Perez, who are still there, those were the cornerstones of this team, and they really carried this team to a world championship. There was some great pitching along the way. Johnny Cueto really helped them in 2015 against your Mets. He was a huge part of that team, and they probably needed Cueto to get over the hump, because the Mets were really competitive in that series, even though it was 4-1. It was a closer series than that. As we know, there were some blunders by the Mets that just, to me, I still can't get over the fact that they allowed an inside the park home run to start the World Series. It's like, what? Like, only the Mets. But I'm sorry, Nicholas, to bring up some bad wounds, but that Alcides Escobar, that was rough. But the Royals still, having said all of that, they still have some really young talent, because they've always been great in the farm system and with their depth. So, they still do have Salvi Perez, and they still have Alex Gordon. Other than that, it's slim pickings. I've always liked Jorge Soler, but he's sort of already, to me, kind of hit his peak as a DH. I don't know much about the young players, O'Hearn and Lopez and Maikel Franco. He's a good pickup for them from the Phillies. But other than that, Mondesi's a good young player at short. Merrifield, again, potential in center field, and Dozier in right field. So, it's going to take them at least 2 to 3 years. But again, at least they're not last place, thanks to your Detroit Tigers.
Yeah. So this team, another very quiet off season, and man, it's a shame. Danny Duffy is Danny Duffy. He's kind of a shell of himself. I believe he's been injured. I mean, the rotation is just terrible. I mean, you got Jorge Lopez, Mike Montgomery, Jacob Junis, Danny Duffy, Brad Keller. I mean, your bullpen, you have like 50,000 people. I mean, at least you got Greg Holland back. I mean, maybe he can be dominant again. I mean, I really always liked him on the show. But, I mean, you guys have such bad pitching. I mean, you could have at least gone out. But, I mean, the full new ownership, they sold their team last year. When I think of a team, I think that the Royals remind me a lot of the Mets. In a way, their owners, they kind of just give up in a way. They're going to sell the team. The Royals sold the team, and the Mets they're looking to sell the team, obviously a higher price and stuff. But I mean, their owners just don't want to spend money. You obviously saw that when you let Eric Hosmer walk. I believe it when in 2016 it was, maybe after 2015 World Series. But once you left him walk, I immediately knew, like, okay, well, these guys, they don't want to spend money anymore. That they hit their peak, and that's kind of where I'm seeing the Mets are at right now, which is why they're going to sell the team. But when I look at your team, I see a lot in the offense-wise and a lot in the potential-wise. You guys have Salvador Perez coming back. He's been a solid catcher, obviously injured Tommy John last year. Ryan O'Hearn, he is a solid power-hitting first baseman. I really like him. Second base, you have Nicky Lopez or Whit Merrifield. Shortstop, you have Adalberto Mondesi. He's a solid player. I drafted him in fantasy. I mean, he's going to steal you 50 bags if he doesn't dislocate his shoulder like he did last year. He's actually a very solid candidate. And then you drafted Bobby Witt Jr. He looks like he's going to pan out amazing last year. Third base, you got Hunter Dozier and Maikel Franco. Really like the pickup of Franco, getting him out of Philly. I think in Kansas City, he's going to do really well for you, getting an everyday role. Alex Gordon, getting older. Bubba Starling, he's decent. Brett Phillips is definitely a young player to watch out for. And, of course, Merrifield, he's going to contend. He's going to get the most hits in the American League, most likely. He's a very, very, very underrated player. I can't emphasize it enough. I think Merrifield would be a great fit with the Mets if only the Mets would trade for him. And then Hunter Dozier, I really like Jorge Soler. He had a breakout season last year. I think he's going to keep it up this year. I'm really looking to see how well he does. Again, I drafted him on my fantasy team. People I draft, I take fantasy seriously. So, I mean, I'm taking these people that I know and I believe in. So, I think the Royals have a ton of potential in their lineup. They can easily go out and score. The Royals could be a team where their pitching gets it right within the first half. And, a 20-game hot run like the Mariners went on last year. That's a quarter of the season, this 82-game proposed thing we talked about earlier in the video. If you get a quarter of the season hot, I mean, you have really good chances. So, I mean, the Royals definitely in this new proposed idea, the proposed plan, if they get out strong, I mean, their lineup will carry them. Just a matter of can they go out and can they get a couple pitchers here and there.
So do you have them as fourth or?
Yeah, I have them as fourth. I have them as fourth.
Sounded very optimistic for a fourth place team.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really like their lineup, but their pitching just is terrible. It's one of the worst in the league. Maybe it's worse than the Tigers, and that's the thing. On to third place. Who you got?
All right, so this might be where we have a difference in opinion. I'm not sure. Again, we never, Nicholas and I never share our picks before the show. We just kind of do it live. But I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the year that the Indians drop out of contention in the AL Central. I have my reasons why. So I'm picking the Indians as the third place team. So there's your little surprise. They obviously, you know, when you're losing your ace, Corey Kluber, that's a huge blow. It just is. And you know, Mike Clevenger and Bieber and Carrasco, you know, a guy that's been injury prone, and you know, I just don't know if they have the pitching. I don't see it. And you know, Brad Hand, you know, he's great out of the bullpen. Now their lineup, it's an interesting lineup because Jose Ramirez had a rough year last year. You know, he really did. And I don't know if that was necessarily indicative of who he is as a player, because I'm a big Jose Ramirez fan. Obviously Lindor is, you know, super. He's a superstar. But, you know, there's been some, you know, there's been a cloud over him with his contract negotiations and trade talks and things like that. Franmil Reyes, to me, he's a wild card for them. He's an outfielder that came from San Diego last year. And that guy can hit. I've seen him hit some shots against the Giants when he was a Padre. So Franmil Reyes, I believe he came over in the Puig deal. I want to say he did.
Yeah.
And that guy could hit. So he's someone to keep an eye on. Santana, you know, Carlos Santana, he's been around. You know, he's definitely shown that he can step up in big moments. Another guy that I want you guys to keep an eye on is Christian Arroyo. I love to keep an eye on my San Francisco Giants, you know, former draft pick duds. This guy definitely has, you know, he just hasn't panned out. He didn't pan out with the Giants. He got traded to Tampa he got traded to Tampa Bay, and then I believe that was the Matt Duffy deal. And the Matt Moore deal. And then that brought Matt Moore to the Giants for Matt Duffy and Christian Arroyo.
Yeah, that was the Longoria deal.
Oh, was that the Longoria deal?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. That was in the Longoria. In the Tampa Bay deal, it was Duffy.
Yeah.
Duffy for Matt Moore. Yeah. But you know, he's a wild card because to me he still has a lot of talent, and he's a pretty good defensive third baseman, and he can play second. And I loved his approach when he was up with the Giants. He just didn't really get a chance. So, you know, maybe he's someone that you can keep your eye on. But overall, when I look at this club, I see offense. I don't see the pitching. So I see them in a shortened season. I see them, you know, maybe 40 to 41 wins, tops. And that's where I have them. I have them in third place.
Yeah, so speaking on Arroyo, I actually have an Arroyo autograph. He was probably my favorite player with the San Jose Giants. I watched him a bunch. When he got called up, I was ecstatic. I really liked that. But again, he hasn't been able to prove himself. Have an Arroyo autograph. You know, I'm just a big Arroyo fan in general. But when you think about the Indians, which I'm also putting at third place, surprisingly enough, you know, great baseball minds think alike. And, I mean, it's really close between them and my second place team. But when I think of the Indians, I think of, you know, the loss of Kluber and the injury, you know, with Clevenger. You think they're pitching, you don't see much. I see a lot in Clevenger. This dude could be a deadly Cy Young candidate. I mean, but again, he hurt his elbow early on in spring training. That's what gives me moving them down out of second place. Shane Bieber, super underrated. Carrasco, can he bounce back? Aaron or Adam Savali, I think they're brothers. One of them in the Indians, he came up last year. He was a dominant. He was a flying around fantasy names. So, I mean, he is a great player. Brad Hand, their bullpen is where I don't trust. I kind of had high hopes for Emmanuel Clase, in which you got for the Kluber deal. You guys were absolutely finessed. Indians fans go riot. But I think that Emmanuel Clase was definitely the centerpiece of that deal, and then he gets suspended for PEDs. So, I mean, that's crazy. So, I mean, their bullpen doesn't have much in terms of you just have Brad Hand, that's your closer, and you just don't really have much. You have Simber, Oliver Perez. So, I mean, there's not much there. Catcher Roberto Perez, I'm actually super high on him. Again, fantasy player last year. Carlos Santana, he jumped back last year after jumping around, being traded to Seattle and Philly. Cesar Hernandez coming from Philly, he's been down. Jose Ramirez, I think he's definitely a solid candidate to bounce back. He's a solid player. Lindor, this is the big question mark. Lindor is definitely a top 10 baseball player in the league. He is ecstatic to watch. He's one of the top players, he's always smiling and stuff. But at what point, as a player's perspective, does you let this, trade rumors, the contracts, get to you? This is why so many people get contract extensions before the season. They don't want to think about it. But coming in and being the center of trades and not knowing what your future is, again, the Indians do not want to spend money. So, I mean, this is a big thing with Lindor. You okay, what do you do? And then the big hole for them is the outfield. Don't have much. You got Jordan Luplow, Oscar Mercado. You have Delano DeShields Jr., Michael Brantley walked, Franmil Reyes, Domingo Santana I'm super high on, Reyes is your DH. So, I mean, this team's offense is just definitely lacking. I see their offense way weaker than their pitching staff. So, I mean, their pitching staff was arguably one of the top in baseball. It probably was the best last year. I mean, losing Bauer and Kluber within no less than a year, I think that's going to be the biggest hurt, which is why I'm dropping them into third place. Second place could be some interesting move here.
Yeah, it's now I want to preface this by saying I won't normally do this with a young team. I really won't, because I'm a big believer in taking your licks and having to get some experience before you can really rise up to the top of a division. But I do think that if this proposal, and again, we're not sure about this proposal yet because the players. I was actually just reading Jeff Passan from ESPN is kind of breaking is saying that players are not real happy with this proposal. And that has to do partly with the shared revenue with the owners, 50-50 revenue. So that's something to keep an eye on. So let's not get too optimistic. But when I look at young teams, I generally don't push them up to the top of a division. But because of the shortened season and because of the expectations and because I do think that this team can really get off to a good start with some momentum. I'm going to take the White Sox as second place. And the reason why is mainly because I love their starting pitching. I really do. I love Giolito and I love Keuchel. And I'm a fan. I'm a Gio Gonzalez fan, even though he's slotted in the fifth hole. And their bullpen is a lot better, with Steve Cishek, Alex Colomé, who's had some postseason experience with Tampa Bay as a closer. And then the additions to this already young stud lineup of Yasmani Grandal, when you look at Edwin Encarnacion as your DH, on top of who you already have with Abreu, when you look at Moncada, Madrigal, Anderson, Jimenez, Robert. I mean, this team, they've got some Nomar Mazara in right field. This team's got some serious talent. Now, they may not be ready for the big time yet, and I don't they even have a good backup catcher in James McCann. So I don't see them – the thing about this team, they're going to be a second-place team that I don't see as a wild card contender, because I see the AL East, which we're going to talk about next week, and possibly the AL West, taking care of those slots for the wild card. Now, if there's 14 teams, that's going to change because there's going to be a little bit of a difference in how you play in for the postseason. But to me, this is a team that, and again, we kind of have to look at it in terms of an 82-game season because that's where we're at right now. I see them being able to win, 50 games, maybe 45. I don't know if that's going to get it done in an 82-game season, but I definitely see them as a team that can win 45 to 50 games in an 82-game season because they've got that much talent. They can hit. They can score runs. They have a lot of young, exciting talent. Next year, I think they're a World Series contender if they can add to the if they can add to their pitching staff, if they can bring in a couple veterans. I think I love their manager Rick Renteria. I think he's great. He's wonderful with young players, and especially Latin players. They are going to be a contender in the next few years. You look at them, okay, and then you look at the National League, and you start looking at young teams that have a chance, to be up and coming. You look at Cincinnati. You look at this club, Chicago. Okay, there's some young teams that are going to compete. Once these top feeders, they sort of come down when like the Cubs, for example, their players are going to, John Lester is getting older. So that's going to end at some point. The only problem for this team is the first place team is so damn good. They're not good enough to win a World Series, but they're really good. They would have been better if they picked up a certain Madison Bumgarner, but they're going to be really good, and they're going to be tough to beat in this division. But I have the White Sox in second.
Oh boy, this is the hardest, kind of placement I have. As you guys know, I was really, really, really high on the Reds. And right now, it's really, really close between the Twins and the White Sox. However, I think I'm going to do it. I have the Minnesota Twins as second place. Hear me out. I'm going to talk about the White Sox. I'll talk about the Twins and why I have them there. But the White Sox, the reason I'm putting them over the Twins is their pitching staff. You have Michael Kopech. Obviously, he's going to come up. He's probably be dominant. You see him, he's throwing 101 in his first spring training appearance. Gio Gonzalez, the most underrated pitcher, I think, this season. Dallas Keuchel, getting him a full season. He's going to be amazing. Reynaldo Lopez, I think he's going to break out this year. Giolito, we saw what he did last year. The bullpen for the White Sox, you have Coleman, Bummer, Shishak, Kelvin Herrera, Evan Marshall, the Homestead product right here. He went to the high school I go to. I mean, he's out here. And then adding all these players, Grandal, you bring back Jose Abreu, you bring in Edwin Encarnacion, that man's going to hit you like 30 home runs. You have Madrigal coming up. You already have Moncada, Tim Anderson building on strong seasons. I mean, Eloy, you have the young Luis Robert, and then the biggest player I have on this roster. Bringing in Nomar Mazara from the Rangers is the one reason I'm putting them over the Twins. Nomar Mazara, I think he got enough time. But I just don't think something in Texas just wasn't clicking. Getting him out of Texas and moving him to a team that's young like him, proven he's going to have guys around him, I think he is going to break out. He is definitely someone to watch out for. 30-something home runs. This dude hits like 500-something foot home runs. I mean, how do you not think this guy is going to break out? The White Sox, I think, are a very, very underrated team. I did it with the Reds. I'm doing it again. The White Sox should be first place. I'm really high on this team. I know it's crazy, but I think their pitching is going to come out way stronger than the Twins, and their lineup, too, is just going to outperform.
You're dead wrong. You're dead wrong. I'm sorry, but I completely disagree with you. And we'll just go right into my first place team. It's the Minnesota Twins, and it's not close. And this team, they're especially if we have our geographical schedule and they play, the bottom feeders of this division. I do not see this team. I do not see this team losing less than 50 games in an 82-game schedule. I don't see the White Sox winning 50 games. I just don't see it happening. I see this team easily 20 games over 500. So if you're talking about an 82-game schedule, you can do the math, Nicholas. You're a high school student. Okay, that's 50 and 32. I'm sorry. That's 52 and 30, or 51 and 31.
Something like that.
Yeah, 51 and 31. So I see this team at the very least 51 and 31. They just have too much talent. I mean, Josh Donaldson. You're not even thinking about Josh Donaldson.
I am.
Coming over to the Twins. You've got young talent. You've got Kepler. You've got Buxton. You've got Rosario. You've got Sano. You've got Rogers closing games out. You've got Marwin Gonzalez off the bench. I mean, you've got just incredible power and, a wonderful, wonderful lineup. You've got – don't count out Maeda and Hill coming over from the Dodgers. Homer Bailey and, to complement Berrios and Odorizzi. This is a team that is easily going to be 20 games over 500 in this division. Now, if they were playing the other teams in the divisions, if they were playing the AL East and the AL West, maybe not. But they're not even going to have to play the Yankees or the Red Sox, who aren't going to be that good, the Blue Jays, the Rays, the Astros, the A's. They're not going to have to play any of those teams. They're going to be playing, again, the bottom feeders of both the AL and NL Central. They're going to be playing a lot of games against the Brewers. They're going to be playing a lot of games against the Royals, the Indians. Okay. Then, I think they're better than the Cubs. Even though I like the Cubs, I think they're better than the Cubs. And they're better than Cincinnati. They're a great team. And for you to sit there and say that a young, unproven White Sox team that is not underrated, they have expectations. There are a lot of people that believe in this team, and I definitely think they're going to be competitive. They're not ready to win a division yet.
Yeah, so, I mean, by no means is it going to be like a blow. I think it's going to come down to like the last 3-4 games. I mean, this division will probably be separated by, from my outlook, probably like 1 or 2 games. The big question mark I have with the Twins is their starting rotation. Berrios, yeah, he's going to be a stud, but he has a strong first half, but then his second half is super shaky. Odorizzi, he's going to have a high ERA. Maeda, I think he's a great pickup. Bailey, Rich Hill, Pineda, I'm not too high on them compared to the White Sox. To me right now, I'm like looking at these two teams, I'm like, okay, who wins at what position? So, this is – and then their bullpen is definitely way stronger, having Taylor Rogers, Trevor May, Tyler Duffy, Sergio Romo. Their bullpen way stronger. But when it comes to the lineup, I think that's where the White Sox get this slight advantage. Mitch Garber, he broke out last year. He was amazing. Miguel Sano, I think he's going to be great, moving him to first base. Luis Arias is a big wild card. I really like Arias personally. He's going to hit you like 320. He's like the Jeff McNeil in the American League. I'm really high on him. Josh Donaldson, he is another one of these big question marks for me. When you look with him for Oakland, he was amazing. He goes over to Toronto. He was good. Then he fell off. Will he be able to keep up what he did with Atlanta? He's getting older too. So the pitching is probably it's equal to what I said to NL East. But I think Josh Donaldson, I just don't trust he's going to be able to match the exact numbers. I think he's going to have a slight decline. It's not. He's still going to be great. Don't get me wrong, but I think his average is definitely going to see a hit. And I think his power may be exactly the same. But I think his average is going to take a huge hit. Jorge Polanco and Eddie Rosario, I think those two are definitely going to take a step back from what they were last year. Byron Buxton, will he be able to stay healthy? That's another question mark. Okay, will he be healthy? He's always injured. If he is healthy, then I think the Twins have a very good shot of taking this division. But if not, then is he going to be able to keep it up? And then Max Kepler, I think he's a solid player. He's quite underrated. And then Nelson Cruz, the final question mark. Everyone tags him like, okay, well, he's getting older. He doesn't do it. He keeps it up. But at one point, can you not keep it up anymore? You see it with Pujols. He kept it up, and then he's kind of declined a lot. I think Cruz is going to be hit with a fast decline. I still think he's good enough. So, if Cruz and Donaldson keep up exactly what they did last year, and then Berrios is able to get a full season, and then Maeda too, a step up from the rotation, I think the Twins have a very, very, very good shot, and they probably will win the division if that happens. But I do think with the decline of like Eddie Rosario, Jorge Polanco, and then their staff. I mean, you look at the staff; they have a lot of older players. So I think, and they don't have the younger core coming up like the White Sox do. So overall, I think this very, very close to division. The hardest choice I think I'd make, and I'm going to make. But overall, several, I had 1 or 2 games. I had the Minnesota Twins in second place. All right. Probably the most boring division, but for me, it's kind of like one of the more interesting divisions. I like, this top of the division may have shocked you. I know I'm wearing Twins stuff. I'm a Twins fan. I liked what they did last year, but I just do think I'm a believer in the young teams like Chicago. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you comment, you will be featured in the next episode next week. Come back next week where we'll be talking about the AL East. Amazing division, probably one of the best divisions in baseball. And we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thank y'all so much for watching. Check out my Twitter at the3_2pitch and check out my Twitch at Nick_crafts. I'm live streaming Thursday through Monday. Once summer comes around, I'll be live streaming every day. YouTube recommends you watch the video in top left corner. Click in top right corner for most recent upload. Click in the middle to subscribe. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.